At this point, the tutorial starts creating a surface to cap off the front part, and I'm also going to do the same. However, instead of course, working in 1/4, I work on the complete upper part and try to just create a surface that caps this open area. To create that rectangle, you can go to Surfaces and then Plane, and in front view, I press the Alt or Option key and then try to click somewhere in the center along the Z-axis. So I create a plane that is perfectly centered. And then I can click on those transformation widgets, the scale, and click the blue point then and scale it down, because I would like it just only to be minimally taller and wider than actually that opening. So basically what I'm creating is a little bit of overshoot. So I have extra flash material of geometry that will intersect. So that is pretty good. However, now how do I line up this lower edge so that it's perfectly on this grid line? Well, we could go to Transform and set Pivot. And again, small reminder, I have my Curve Snap tool set to 10. If I now turn the Snap to Curve on and click now on this line, you see that this line is being subdivided 10 times. And I have one subdivision with 10 in the center. And I can release my mouse button, and now my pivot point is perfectly centered at the midpoint of this lower edge of the surface. So now I can go to the Move tool and move it to somewhere, and then click Alt and click exactly at the 0 point of my scene, and my rectangle is positioned perfectly along the y-axis, so it sits on the ground plane, and it's also centered along the z-axis. Let's take a look at the different options we have to also position this plane correctly along the x-axis. So let's go into a left view, and you see here there's this line on my sketch where this plane should roughly end. So one way, as you know, could be by going to Move, having local turned on, click Go, and we know that this edge is roughly 5.7 millimeters away from the z-axis along the x-axis. So I could put in 5.7 for x, comma space 0 for y, comma 0 for z, and press enter, and then it is perfectly positioned to there. You could also go to Windows and Window Information, and for example here you see translate along the x-axis is 5.7 millimeters. So there you could, for example, type this in as well. Now I brought it back to the z-axis and the world plane so it perfectly lines up, or 5.7. I bring it back. And I notice actually that I scaled this object down a little bit too much because it hardly intersects with my surface. So I'm going back to Scale and scale it a little bit. So like this. And because also I have my pivot point set to the lower edge, the scale command of course works to and from that pivot point. Or basically, as you can see, it scales to the to the x-axis and away from the x-axis. So those are a few ways how you then could make sure that your front plane, for example, perfectly intersects with your the side surface at a given